Hey everybody, it's Lance with Field Trial Central again. We just left Alan and Larry's camp and we drove about an hour and a half east to Antler, North Dakota area, and we're going to have an interview with Randy Anderson and Tiffany Jenry, and I think you're going to like this one. We've got a historic piece behind us. We're going to talk about, again, puppies, derbies, and the all-age dogs. And if I can, I'm going to try to get as deep into the conversation we can on how do you make these dogs that want to run from here to the moon work for you, for them. And I know Randy and Tiffany are going to give us some good information about that. But before we get into that conversation, Randy's going to give us a little talk about the historic piece behind us. So I'll let Randy talk about that. Here we go.
Yeah, thank you, Lance, for coming to our camp, and I'll talk a little bit about the historical piece behind it. It's the John S. Gates dog wagon that was used by John Rex, of course John S. and John Rex, and then in later years Robin. And Robin used it after the horse drawn. He cut the tongue off of it, made it shorter, and pulled it by a green Dodge pickup that they called the Green Machine. But,
we can certainly walk around this.
John, the trailer was built in Albany, Georgia, the metal part of it, and was brought up here, and I'd heard by train. And Mr. Gates had a family in Pearson, Manitoba, build the wagon on it, the horse-drawn wagon. And Calvin Davis, Mr. Freddie Epp, several dog trainers during that era worked off this wagon. The amount of champions, Safari, all the John S. Gates, John Rexes, Texas Fight, Texas Squire, the list goes on. And I think Robin told me that Flatwood Hank was one of the last national champions that he had actually used off this wagon. It was sitting in a junk pile at Miss Clark's when Tiffany and I went and got it. And I've got pictures of it, and I'll share those pictures with you in case you can incorporate it in it.
Yep.
But we took it to Towner, to Tiffany's father, and he took everything down and had it sandblasted. The wheels had to be totally, completely rebuilt. If you notice, they are the hub that's actually covering the bearings. All new bearings, all new tires. And when we stripped it down, that's when we found the Lilliston Company out of Albany, Georgia, had built that trailer. And it, like I said, it was a peanut in the peanut industry.
Yeah, peanut industry.
And Tiffany's father, like I said, he's the one who reconstructed it. The plywood that it was built out of originally was 4 by 10 sheets, and we had to special order it at Menards. And other than that,
Yeah, it's a historic piece, right?
Oh,
Just to
it
think
is.
of all the dogs that went through it, and the people that handled off of it, and the stories it's heard in itself, if it could talk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Both Gates, Robin and John Rex. John Rex told me he started driving it when he was 6. Several people drove this wagon. Miss Denton Sharp, which was from Oklahoma, she drove it. Her husband would come up and she'd drive this wagon. Robin just was over here the other day and said he fell off of it when he was 6 and broke his arm. They've turned it over. It's had some wrecks going across the prairie. But yeah, we were pleased to do it, and I know the Gates family's been very happy with it, and it's been quite a conversation piece with it at camp. We'd like to either get it home in the near future, and to Grand Junction.
Absolutely, yeah, that's where it needs to be. I believe that's a good resting spot for it.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's seen a lot of dogs in its life.
Oh, the amount of champions is unbelievable. Hall of Fame dogs.
Yeah, understood. Well, we're here to talk about what are you doing? Last year, we talked about why, and Bill interviewed you guys last year. This year we want to go a little bit more in depth. What are you doing? And again, let's talk about puppies, derbies, and your all-age dogs. So if you want to talk about your puppy program per se, how you developing them to prepare them to become bird dogs.
Okay, well the question with what are we doing here? We're here to develop bird dogs of all pointing dog breeds, and our focus is we're in the business of we're in the field trial business and in the business of winning field trials. So we're here to do development, and And of course, we do have a puppy program, and to start a little bit on it. Starting at puppy and we'll go up. Is that what you kind of wanting to do?
Yeah. When do you start working with that puppy? That would be my first question.
We'll take puppies, from any age. I don't care if they're 8 weeks old or if they're 6 to 7 months old. And each one is going to be in a different program, obviously, in different spaces into that. But even an 8-week-old puppy, just getting out to learn, go to objectives. Maybe necessarily take them out with an older dog. That dog teaches them how to run to those objectives. Learning how to be staked out, load in the trailer, all those little tiny things that we take for granted are overlaying to them becoming a bird dog.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. These dogs, these puppies on their development up here, if we take out and we just go forever. They get an opportunity to use their nose and chase birds of all kinds, and to get the possibility to get into wild birds, they start teaching themselves. They get to knowing the difference between a meadowlark and a sharp-tailed grouse. But all that positive part of that, if they're learning to go with you on their own by attrition, by keeping them down and they're throwing that head up and looking for you,
looking for direction,
they're wanting to go with you without being forced with a collar. And I think years down the road, that's going to pay big dividends.
Yep.
They wasn't forced to go with you.
Gotcha.
They were taught and enjoyed it.
So your puppies, do you, when you're, I would say, at home before you come here, are you putting them on liberated quail, anything like that, to expose them to help them along before you get here?
No, my theory behind that, we use a lot of boot leather. I mean, we walk our puppies, we get them learning to go under fences and creeks, but when, I'll add when they're old enough to go in front of a horse, we put them there. But I'm a firm believer, if we could go right out here in this pasture and throw down 10 quail and take that dog out there and let him try to find them, we're taking them to him. He never learned to hunt. I'd rather bring a puppy up here that's never been put on a liberated bird and let him learn to hunt and find game and learn to just hunt, period.
Yep.
And then when you get home from here, you can do all that liberated bird stuff.
Gotcha. So that ties back into last year's questions of why are you here? I'm here. One of the main reasons, we heard a lot was obviously the wild birds, right? So the wild birds teach that dog so many things that we can't on a liberated bird. And you're saying, if I'm hearing correctly, it teaches the dog to hunt naturally.
Absolutely. They learn how to use the wind and get on which side of that tree line right there to go down. And you can't teach that by throwing a bird out the back.
Yep.
And honestly, for me personally, the puppy program that we have incorporated into our routine is probably the most fun and most exciting part for me. I enjoy watching the lights turn on and watching them, just be a bird dog.
Yep.
It's great.
We've got several. I mean, not all these dogs are going to be champions, of course, but we have a lot of dogs in Texas and throughout the country that's been up here through the puppy program to be gun dogs. And we've gotten several gun dogs this year off of a setter in Texas. And he was with us up here at 8 weeks old.
Got an 8-week-old puppy.
And he is top notch. And every time that guy hunts with somebody, our phone's ringing.
Yep.
And it's because of that dog's exposure.
But a lot of our puppies that come up here as young puppies are repeat customers for several years to come. And like I said, it's nice to be part of the journey of their development.
Because they've seen the benefits of what dogs that have came here turn into, right?
Yes.
Yep. That's great. So, taking that puppy, now we want to put a little bit, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but putting a little bit more manners on him, right? Around birds. Now he's a derby dog, right? Now we got to, he's not doing add and subtract. Now we got to have him do multiply and divide. I would call it that way. So, talk about what your program here is in the summer on your derby dogs.
Well, before we get here, there's a lot of groundwork already been done. He's been here maybe, as a puppy or other places. If we purchased them from somebody in the South, there's a good possibility they've been to Georgia, miles and miles in front of a horse. And then we try to do a lot more of that at home. and then start our yard working program to get our collar foundation. And we use the collar foundation around the flank to take chase. And we get up here, we're not even thinking about taking chase right off the bat. Depends on how early our birds are and where the dog is. But if that dog's using his nose and pointing his birds and going with them and wanting to stop on his own, we let that happen, try to build that desire. And then no verbal, it all silent. And if we got our right foundation, we start taking chase, and then setting back and a little indirect pressure. Trying to build polish. That's the main thing. Is not getting in too big of a hurry. Every one of these dogs will come out of here different. If I said I'm bringing him home broke, or if I'm bringing him home, 100% broke, it's going to depend on that individual, and of course depend on our summer also.
Yep.
Or the game contact that dog's having.
So,
but the best part is there's no cookie cutter process or program. Every dog has their own developmental speed and whatnot, and different personality for that matter.
Yep.
And there's no cookie cutter program for every single dog that's going to work. You have to know how to read and adjust to that dog, and then just go from there.
so the take chase and setting them back. Help our viewers. Help layman terms, industry terms.
Well, I like a dog if I want him to reach to find game up here, a field trial dog. I'm going to use him as an example. And the further away that I think he is finding game from me and still has a rapport, builds some range. And if we're a quarter to a half in there and he's pointing and we're going to him, not saying a lot, just watching him, and all of a sudden he rears back and knocks him. And if we're a little further in that program, very low intensity, if you did your homework, and he starts to take chase, you let him commit continuous button until he stops. Beautiful style. What I mean by the indirect is we ride in there as quick as we can because of the timing. Set back, indirect pressure, nick, get back in front of him. Hope there's a sleeper still there.
Right.
And if not, that's when we do our shooting and really polishing, trying to keep that polish on that dog.
Polish and positive.
And I think I'm okay for saying this because I don't want any of these words to be used against us in some other scenario. So holding that button down, you've put foundation on that dog, and I want to clarify this for everybody. That is not cruel. You've put a foundation on that dog. That dog knows what it means, and it's going to work through it until it stops and give you the outcome, the behavior that you're expecting.
Absolutely.
Everything that we do in the yard overlays to what we are going to be doing in the field.
Yeah.
And yes, so they do have that foundation on them. They know what they're supposed to do.
Exactly. It is basically the brakes. And the intensity level is so unbelievably low. And they've had so much of it done without a bird in the picture. And if you just took a dog out here and threw him down and didn't have that foundation, he didn't know if a bird did it or if he just got struck by lightning.
Yeah, and I didn't want to go there, and I'm sorry, but I think you guys know social media enough. The last year, there's been so many anti-dog, anti-trial, anti-sport, anti-game, everything that's trying to work against us. I don't want any of these words to be used against us, so I want to clarify that, and so I appreciate your clarification on that. So at the end of... absolutely.
That our process and the majority of the dog trainers out here, the collar is actually used to reinforce something that they've already been taught. And particularly ours, we teach the command and then reinforce with stimulation.
Yep.
And if you've done that right, it's very, very low.
Yep. Perfect. Come the end of camp, I'd call it right before you're probably going to go to Canada, what do you expect in that Derby dog to look like? You want him to be finished, or where's he at in your program?
Well,
depends on the dog.
Exactly. And a lot of the judging has changed. There was a time that if you had a broke Derby in Canada, you're not going to win anything. And I'm not saying that isn't the case now, but used to. John Little, who's passed away from North Carolina, told us one time at the All-American in South Dakota, he said, boys, if you think you got a broke Derby here and you're winning it, you're probably not. He said, I want to see these derbies jumping at them, not away from them. And I've really never forgot that. And coming from an old school background with a lot of the people I was associated with early, they didn't want derbies broke. And but the late Bud Epperson, he was another one, and he developed the early development of cross match, which Andy Doherty's dad won the nationals with, and Andy was a big part of it. I watched him actually kick dogs out that was broke. He said the potential was already taken away from him. But I like leaving here, not so much just going to the trials at Mortlack. Leaving here, we'd like for our derbies to be what I call fall broke, you know, to where we can get in front of them, stop them, and not lose that desire.
Yep.
That's the key.
Yeah, and I've heard that terminology
And
with
the
a couple
style.
people now, fall broke. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say amongst you trainers, you've come up with. Fall broke is if I can get off, get in front of him, shoot. If he takes a step, I can still verbally get him to stop.
Yeah, and you know, we use that terminology, but that's one thing that I think the sport's changed a lot. There's not a lot of difference anymore. Their fall broke is about as broke as they are. They're pretty broke anymore. And I don't know if that's good. I can't say it's bad, but I don't like it as much. Derby stakes used to be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It used to be about potential.
Yeah, now we're seeing
Gotcha.
that potential. Right
yeah, yeah, yep. That might be another whole segment if we can talk on that, right?
Right.
And
We
but
go forever.
yes, but we're this is great stuff, and I appreciate it. So we talked about those puppies, talked about the derbies. You guys run the all-age circuit. One thing that I want to capture from you guys and to give to our viewers, and maybe, you know, the newbies, the people that are listening for the first time about field trial dog, it's always, I got an all-age dog, oh, that's a runoff dog. That dog just run. So we all know any shooting dog, gun dog, all-age dog, they're capable of running a long ways away. And how do you guys make that dog work for you when you know he's out there? He's in there a half, a mile. He's in there, right?
2 miles.
2 miles. How do you get that dog to work for you?
Well, I think the development, whether it's an old dog or a young dog, and you know, if we got one that's had some problems or was doing different things, I feel like a dog's going to run off for 2 reasons, and there's a lot more than that. But the 2 main reasons is the escape pressure and the self-hunt. So if that dog is happy and working for you, that's good. And if you're keeping him in game, that's keeping him happy and that association with you in game. And if you're not keeping him in the right game bird that or into game birds, whatever species of games or the bird that you're trying to compete on or hunt, that dog's going to go off and do his own deal, whether it's a rabbit, squirrel, or the worst thing is a deer.
Yep.
And I think we'd even talked about a little earlier, you know, we were talking about dogs with having a good rapport, you know, with us. And Alan Pretty told me years ago when I watched him run Additions Go Boy, and he told me, he said, I asked him, I said, how do you get a dog to do that? And he said, if an all-age dog don't like you, he don't have to come back. And I've never forgot that. And
Yeah.
with Tiffany being involved, our program's changed on that aspect of it, and I'll let her.
I think there's, none of us would be doing this for a living if we didn't truly love a dog.
Yeah.
And it's one of those deals to where I try to personally use a lot of positive reinforcement, whether it's with treats or, I've even carried donuts, in my pocket, after a dog has, done a good job and comes back to me and they're looking for that reward. But the big thing, like Randy just said, was just having a good rapport with the dog. And that might be letting them come sit up on the deck and drink a glass of sweet tea with you and
Yep.
scratch their belly, but there's a lot of things that factor into keeping that dog with you. Of course, we're fortunate to where we're both out training together, and so they also see me in the capacity of being their trainer and having respect for me as well.
Yep.
So, but there is a softer side. We love these dogs, and they're part of our family.
Right.
And
Yep.
the big thing, like I said, is just keeping them mentally happy. And I promise you, these dogs love their jobs.
Yep.
And another good way to keep an all-age dog is to have one hell of a horse.
We can use, I don't want to single out a lot of dogs, but Miller's Happy Jack is a good example. I mean, we made him a buddy, and
Yes.
our success to him, that we had with him, was getting that good rapport. Now, it didn't last as long as I'd like for it to, but it was still very, very successful.
Yes.
But he had a unique, or he still has, a unique way of grabbing people. I mean, he makes you love him, but he's very, very self-employed.
Yeah.
And we just had to get him to work for us a little bit.
And that's a big thing, kind of, I touched base on that before, was you really have to sit there and look at each individual dog, because every single dog has a different personality.
Right.
And being able to recognize that and how to make it work for your advantage is a great thing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
You know, Adams County, we won the Prix Awards with him in 13 and 14. He didn't want any part of being a buddy. You know, he had a job to do, and he did it well. And but if you bring him in the house, he just was like a statue. He didn't want to do nothing.
Yep.
Where Happy Jack crawl up, you'd think he was a poodle.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd thought he was a couch dog.
he was a couch dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's just two examples. There's a whole bunch of them between here and there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's the thing that I want to make sure that we explain enough to the people. There's like a shooting dog versus an all-age dog, and all of them are capable of being huge or big running dogs, but how do you get that dog to work for you? And I liked your terminology earlier when we were off camera talking about, you said about Miller's Happy Jack, I believe, but he was self-employed. One of the, like, he wanted to be self-emploed, but I needed to find a way for him to be, employed for me and work for me, not for him. And that hits home, and that just goes back to all that positive reinforcement.
It does, and I mean, when I first started scouting for Randy, I believe it was in 2013, and I just kind of inadvertently got thrown into it because he needed somebody, and we ended up placing or winning that championship, and he's like, you're hired. But Happy Jack was a perfect example of that. We were at the Mid-America Championship, had no idea where I was going, and looking for the dog, and pretty soon I hear this, there he is, he found me.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, let's go. And it just, I think a lot of it is just having that positive relationship with those dogs.
Right, yeah.
So.
and then 3 finds later, I tell her, baby,
4.
4 finds later, I said, we've got 15 minutes to go, don't lose him.
No pressure. No pressure. That was my first champion that I scouted.
How many cents?
14 dogs I brought to champion titles.
That's not counting the all-age stakes and derby placements.
No, that's just
yeah,
champions.
that's just championships. Yep, that's awesome. Yeah, it's great, and I know that people are gonna love watching this one, and at some point we got to cut it off. We're going on 24 minutes,
Oh, no.
but this is great stuff. I could listen to you guys all day long, and I know everybody else is gonna feel the same. But for viewership, let's we'll try to wrap this up. We still have our wild card question, so you gotta pick a question or a number 1 to 4, random number 1 through 4.
Pick it.
1.
1. That's who is the if you could, past or present, go and train or handle train with anybody for a day, who would it be?
Ches Harris.
Ches
We're
Harris.
going way back, but he won the national several times. He had a connection right here to Antler. I was told he had his own car. They brought the dogs here by train. He either leased it or stole it, however he did it, but he had his own car. And he'd let other handlers, put their dogs in there also. But I was told he run a heck of a good dog business. And he also worked for C.E. Griffin, who owned Mount Rega Farms and had like 9 dog trainers. But actually, Delmer Smith come from that same group of people.
Huh.
And through Pete Dixon and Skilly Skillman, the list goes on, and I won't bore you with all this. But Ches Harris married a woman from my hometown, and But I heard he could easily have ran Chase Manhattan Bank as easy as he could that dog business.
Wow.
7 foot tall, or nearly 7 foot tall.
That was a big car.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he come by a different vehicle. They sent those dogs in a box car. They didn't ride on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they had folks that did rode on those cars.
Yeah. The thing that I got from last year with your guys' video and now, you know, just the history. And I think that, you know, as we go on with this sport and your career, you know, it's the history that you keep bringing up, and I think we got to keep that grounded as well. There's so much history in this, in bird dogs, and especially where we're at. You know, it's filled with it, and what you're leaning on, and Tiffany's dad restoring it, it's great stuff. And
and even where I grew up, you know, I'm from Towner, North Dakota.
There's history there that goes back
Yeah.
in the 20s. I mean, Tiffany's ranch, where she grew up, I mean, she can tell you the dog trainers that were there.
Yeah.
Well, some of them just you know, Bud Doherty,
Right.
you know, Ron Thielman. I mean, the list goes. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
even name everybody,
Yeah.
but
And for our viewers, if you want to go back to last year's, Dave Pomfret, he's in that area right now, and sitting on some of the grounds.
on
that,
what used to
you
be
know,
the Leech Ranch.
Exactly, and it's just as rich as this area is, right? So
Absolutely.
it's good stuff. So
My first major championship in 1981 or 82. I don't want to, it's either one of those years. I would have been about 22 years old. I flew up here and went to actually it was called the Saskatchewan before they traded the name to the All-American, but John Crystal put the Saskatchewan on there, and Mike Hicks and Peanut Shorter and we were all up here. I remember Miss Mel Mobley in Georgia was visiting about these young boys being up there by themselves. I was glad to be one of them.
Yeah.
I'm still one of them young boys. I was glad to be a part of that.
yeah, no, that's wonderful, and I appreciate the history. And I think again, we have to remember that and keep that in mind as we go forward with this sport. And
The tradition.
Yep, the tradition and the history of
Stay
it, yep.
focused on that tradition and keep it alive.
well, I appreciate it. It's been wonderful, guys. You have a wonderful summer camp, and if I don't see you before you take off for the circuit, you know, I wish you guys success. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.